Number 10. Willow. This is the version of Mantis that exists in DC Comics. No, I'm not kidding. Mantis was created by Steve Englehart and Don Heck, and when Englehart left Marvel to go work for DC, he took his creation with him. Sort of. I mean, obviously Mantis never really left Marvel. She got written out for a while as she was off being the baby mama to a cosmic messiah who actually recently came back in comics, the being known as Sequoia, or simply Koya, who attempted to destroy Earth and defeat the Skrull-Kree Alliance as leader of the Kotati in Marvel's Empire event a few years back. But she would eventually return. However, while Marvel would keep their own version of that character, Englehart would also create a version of her for DC, known as the alien being named Willow, basically the Mantis of DC's Justice League of America from Earth 1. And friends, before we move on to our next spot on this list, if you love what we do here at Top 10 Nerd, be sure to let us know that you love us by clicking that like. Number 9. First Guardians team. While some wouldn't consider them to be an alternate team based on the fact that they themselves are technically the original team, by modern standards, you could argue that they are an alternate. After all, Andy Lanning and Dan Abnett, with an assist from James Gunn in terms of the MCU depictions, are basically the creators of the modern day Guardians, the version of the team that inspired the Guardians that we have in the MCU. However, before the 2008 team was introduced, we had these folks, who made their first appearance back in the 1960s. Technically, they're also from an alternate reality and not Earth 616, hailing from the futuristic alternate reality of Earth 691 and the year 3000. The original team made their first appearance in Marvel Superheroes issue number 18. Their roster initially included Vance Astro, Martin X Tanaga, Captain Charlie 27, and Yondu Udanta. Number 8. Comic strip. The Guardians of the Galaxy even assist in the famous Spider-Man comic strip, or at least Rocket the Raccoon does. His comic strip alternate self ended up being one of the allies of Spidey, teaming up with him to save Albuquerque, New Mexico from famed Guardians villain Ronan the Accuser. If you don't remember Ronan, allow me to refresh your memory. He was played by Lee Pace in the original Guardians of the Galaxy film, where he was revealed to be working for Thanos and ended up attacking Xandar before the Guardians of the Galaxy managed to form in order to protect Xandar and defeat him. Spider-Man and Rocket didn't initially hit it off in this strip. As most superhero team-ups generally start in the comics, they started out as adversaries, but initially realized they were both fighting on the side of good, and so they decided to team up to take Ronan on. Number 7. Original Star-Lord. When Star-Lord first appeared in the comics, he was a very different character. He initially joined up with the Guardians of the Galaxy original roster, but wasn't yet the version of Star-Lord that we have become used to based on Chris Pratt's depiction of the character in the MCU, which in turn was inspired of course by the 2008 Guardians of the Galaxy version, which greatly saw a revamp to his character and the whole team. This version of Star-Lord made his first appearance in Marvel Preview issue number 4 and was still known as Peter Quill, but with a very different look than his modern version. He also hailed from a different reality altogether, the Earth of 791, so while being the original version of this character, he also technically is an alternate in terms of him not hailing from the comic book main continuity of Earth 616 that we've come to consider as the main reality of Marvel today. Number 6. St. John Quarrel. Who is St. John Quarrel? Well, the second Star-Lord. Yep. Before there was Peter Quill of Earth 616, but after there was Peter Quill of Earth 791, in the in-between times, if you will, there was St. John Quarrel. St. John Quarrel was the Star-Lord of the 90s and had a look very much inspired by his original 1975 counterpart. St. John made his first appearance in Star-Lord issue number 1. He ended up becoming the new Star-Lord thanks to the previous Star-Lord's ship. Yeah, the original Star-Lord actually had a sentient ship. This ship had been separated from Peter for 12 years at this point, and so she recruited and helped St. John to become the new Star-Lord in Peter's absence. Number 5. Anime team. Yeah, if you don't know, Marvel has anime, and I've actually heard it's pretty decent. I watched the beginning of an episode involving Iron Man the other day, and I actually really enjoyed the look and feel of the anime, so this is definitely something I need to revisit, the whole Marvel anime world. I think some of the full episodes may even be up on YouTube if you're interested and curious about them. One of the anime-inspired series that was created to push Marvel's universe and characters more into the Japanese market was the show Marvel Disc Wars, the Avengers. In this series, the Guardians of the Galaxy do appear. Disc Wars, by the way, is basically like what would happen if you took Pokemon and just like mashed it up with Marvel comics. Marvel heroes basically become trapped in these things called discs, and they require the help of children to free them from their Pokeball-like containers by using special bio codes to like open them up. Okay. But honestly, think of the merchandise potential here, guys. Number 4. Drax the Android. A lot of folks really love the Silver Surfer cartoon despite its short run. For many, this is still one of the memorable introductions they had to Marvel Comics and Jack Kirby's amazing art. Silver Surfer, the animated series, while short-lived, only having 13 episodes, was revolutionary in terms of its production and its design. The series combined both cel-shaded and computer animation, bringing to life Jack Kirby's famous art style. Drax appears in the series but is quite different from his comic book self, instead being an android who ends up becoming a friend to the Silver Surfer. Instead of Drax being a rage-fueled being with the spirit of a human who Thanos killed, brought back to life by Mentor, Thanos' dad, who felt guilty about his son's involvement in the destruction of life, Drax is an android who works with the scientist Mentor, who in this reality is actually Thanos' brother. Also, if you didn't know, yeah, that's Drax's origins in the comics. I know, it's pretty wild. Number 3. Anime Rocket Raccoon. What can I say? I guess Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 really has me in my feels when it comes to Rocket Raccoon. While we already talked about the team as a whole, I really wanted to zoom in here on the anime version of Rocket Raccoon. I just love his whole look in this show. He's got a very kind of chibi vibe to me, very cute but also feisty. Honestly, I want a plush of the anime version of Rocket Raccoon. That would be so cool. He's so cute. Rocket Raccoon makes his first appearance in Marvel Disc Wars The Avengers Season 1 Episode 24, if you want to get a more animated look at him. He is of course a member of the Guardians of the Galaxy team here, like he is in so many other alternate universes. Despite being literally the cutest, he also hates when people call him cute, and of course he hates being referred to as a rodent, just like the version of the character we're used to seeing on the big screen in the MCU. Number 2. Lorelei. Willow wasn't the only alternate version of Mantis that Englehart would create. He'd also make another version of the character known as Lorelei. This version, however, was from a third publisher. Yeah, after Englehart took Mantis to DC, creating Willow, she got a miniseries there. However, when that miniseries was cancelled, he moved again and created another version of Mantis. He really loves Mantis, so that he could continue her story. I love that there are 3 versions of Mantis with 3 different publishers, but that technically her story is continued in each of these continuities. This version of the character was known as Lorelei. Like the Mantis over at Marvel and the one over at DC, she was expecting an alien baby, and Lorelei's story saw the continuation of her becoming a mother, with this version of the character giving birth to the child that she'd had through 2 other continuities and publishers prior to this. Number 1. Gamora the Wanderer. Gamora also appears in the Silver Surfer animated series. She also is quite different from her comic book counterpart like Drax. This alternate version of Gamora belongs not to the Guardians of the Galaxy team, but instead is a member of a group known as the Wanderers. The Wanderers initially act as antagonists to the Silver Surfer, tracking him down so that they can basically put him on trial for Galactus' crimes. Pretty unfair, really, since Silver Surfer, he just works for Galactus, but I guess, catching Galactus and putting him on trial, as well as, finding a courtroom big enough for him to fit in, would be a much greater, if not completely impossible challenge. So, honestly, fair enough.
Intent Cosmic Ghost Rider. Amidst Earth's final stand against Thanos, tragedy struck the Punisher when debris from a building hurled by the Hulk's clash claimed his life. His soul was sent to Hell, consumed by a burning desire to punish the Mad Titan for decimating the planet. Seizing an unholy opportunity though, the Punisher struck a demon pact with Mephisto, transforming into the latest Ghost Rider. Yet upon his return to Earth, desolation greeted him. Thanos had vanished, leaving nothing but lifeless ruins in his wake. The Ghost Rider endured countless years wandering the barren land, tormented by solitude with anyone to deliver justice upon or to cherish, and even as Mephisto turned deaf to his calls, the Rider's sanity slipped through his grasp. Yeah, he went insane. The Punisher turned into Ghost Rider and then went crazy. But fate intervened when a wounded Galactus arrived on Earth. Unaware of its lifeless state and seeking aid against Thanos, the Ghost Rider offered the dead world to the Great Devourer in return for being able to punish the Mad Titan as his herald, an offer that Galactus accepted. The crazy Punisher Ghost Rider gains cosmic powers. Then they go on an interstellar journey just trying to kill Thanos. Just because he obliterated all life. Yeah, centuries passed, and their saga culminated when they finally confronted Thanos, resulting in Galactus' beheading. In at 9, Speed Demon, one of my favorite things to talk about. Speed Demon, first introduced in Speed Demon number 1, is, aside from what you might have called Drax to your girlfriends, is a combination of Barry Allen and Johnny Blaze. Blaze Allen was a circus daredevil who sold his soul to become the first Speed Demon. And yes, there are actually multiple Speed Demons. The demon component of Etrigan was also formerly Jay Garrick before the Night Spectre stole Jay's soul. The Night Spectre approached Blaze and asked him to serve in his mission to collect souls of the most pure and the most corrupt, which just seems weird to me. Like, why would you want the most pure and the most corrupt? But whatever, okay. Blaze Allen initially refused, so in an attempt to persuade him, at his wedding night, Night Spectre stole Iris's soul. Yep, that's right. You thought that Crisis on Earth X and invading Barry Allen's wedding was crazy? Well, how about this? Blaze then accepted the bond, hoping to get Iris back, or at least to ensure her safety, and of course he doesn't get it back after he accepts the deal, but yeah. Speed Demon only speaks in rhymes, which I tried to do, and then they told me to stop doing it here, but he's also a speedster with a flaming skull head that can breathe hellfire, which is awesome. Wally West, which is an amalgam of Danny Ketch and Wally West, which I don't know why they're not called Wally Ketch or Danny West, but whatever, was the next Speed Demon who accepted the power in order to help his uncle get Iris back, but obviously that didn't work, because it's a demon. In at 8, Ghost Spider. Ghost Spider comes from Earth 11638, and in this reality, Peter Parker's Uncle Ben never died, and he actually helped Peter to train as a hero with his new spider powers, becoming the Amazing Spider, a famous and powerful superhero who also became a rich and successful scientist, having his own company called Parker Technologies. With his resources and motivation from Uncle Ben, the Amazing Spider used transportation technology to bring Spider-Men from other universes and absorb their powers to increase his. After bringing the Spider-Man of Earth 616 and making him believe he arrived to this universe by accident, the Amazing Spider was weakened by the feedback of the dimensional portal. Eventually, the Amazing Spider was convinced that what he was doing was not actually heroic and allowed himself to die. But after dying, the Sorcerer Supreme Dr. Banner infused Peter's spirit that was trapped in hell with the powers of the damned, causing him to become a form of Ghost Rider, calling himself the Ghost Spider. And honestly, this is one of the baddest Peter Parker Spider-Man suits of all time. It's so freaking sick. Although the feet weird me out. You didn't need to have the indents of toes. And at 7, Alejandra Jones. Alejandra Jones, born to an American human trafficker, and an unknown American woman, endured a harrowing upbringing as she and her siblings were sold and trained in Nicaragua's temple to become the next Ghost Rider. Yeah, he was training a whole bunch of dudes to become the next Ghost Rider. And with the guidance of Adam, Alejandra's path crossed with Johnny Blaze, the current Ghost Rider, who was convinced by Adam to relinquish the curse. A resurrection of the Seeker led to Alejandra's selection as the next Ghost Rider, and she was dispatched to Dayton, Ohio to confront Scotty, the daughter of the Red Skull. Despite putting up a valiant fight, Alejandra was eventually defeated. Meanwhile, Johnny Blaze learned of Adam's sinister ambition to purge humanity of sin, which explains why he was training up the next Ghost Riders, just transforming humanity into emotionless beings, which honestly I feel like could be a good idea at this rate. But feeling responsible for giving up the curse, Blaze agreed to assist in separating Ghost Rider from Adam, embarking on a separate mission to thwart that plan. But yeah, it's a dope story. And at 6, Hellhawk. This one's pretty freaking dope. In the 11th century, Hellhawk, a Sioux chief with Native American heritage, wielded the powers of the Ghost Rider and joined Thor's Avengers of 1000 AD. Moving forward to the 17th century, Hellhawk found himself in a rivalry with Noble Kane. Unfortunately though, his life was cut short when Narcosis took his life as a message to Mephisto, which was orchestrated by Belcasso to keep the spirits of vengeance away from Limbo. But with the powers of the Ghost Rider, he took revenge on men who would attack and slaughter Native American tribes, which is probably the most understandable form of vengeance that has ever been demonstrated by a Ghost Rider. Okay, this is dope. I want like a Pocahontas crossover. Like do like a Disney owns Marvel. Make Pocahontas a Ghost Rider, please. Halfway through into number 5, Ghost Hammer. A result of what is basically the civil war of Warp World, which was created when Gamora used the Infinity Gauntlet to fold the world in half. This character is a warp between Ghost Panther and Iron Hammer, which in turn are respectively mashups of Black Panther and Ghost Rider, and of Iron Man and Thor. Yeah, it's a little confusing. After stopping the Supreme Seven from destroying their world, the Defenders ended up experiencing a cataclysmic event where their world ended up folding in upon itself and once again merged Ghost Panther and Iron Hammer into the new being of Ghost Hammer. And they have all the powers of Ghost Panther from 616 and those of Iron Hammer from 616. They're basically the combination of 4 total badasses. So yeah, T'Challa Odinson is gonna make it onto this list. That's freaking dope. His name is T'Challa Odinson. In it for All Rider. Robbie and a Deathlock sent by Avenger Prime learned of the threat of the multiversal Masters of Evil and the Council of Red, prompting them to embark on a journey across the multiverse in search of potential allies. Among the recruits were Ant-Man, Star Panther, alternate versions of Captain America, the God of Fists, the Carol Corps, and various Iron Man counterparts, and during their mission, Robbie Reyes discovered that he was the All Rider, possessing the ability to ride anything. Insert the giggles of 14-year-olds and those like me who can't really mature because being an adult is boring. However, during an assault on Avengers Prime base, the God Quarry, Robbie's powers inexplicably failed. He later regained them during the battle, using them to seal a breach in the God Quarry, thus saving the entire multiverse from the destructive power of the First Firmament. Sacrificing himself, Robbie entered the First Firmament and sealed it from within, leaving him trapped there while rebuilding his car and awaiting for the opportunity to return home. But I just like the fact that this dude can hop on anything and it immediately becomes like his Ghost Rider thing. I just imagine him like pushing a child off of a scooter and hopping on it, and then just like the wheels start flaming and he just goes. Getting close to the end into number 3, Goose Rider. Yep, that's not a typo, that's real. In the peculiar world of Earth 8311, Marvel created a universe where its characters were cartoon animals. Yep, that's right, you know who I'm talking about, Spider-Ham. Among these animal superheroes, or anti-heroes, whatever you want to say, resides Goose Rider, a spirited form of Ghost Rider, which is funny because it's a spirit. And anyway, in his fiery form, Goose Rider is a goose, shocking, donning a Daredevil costume outfit, kind of like an Evil Knievel thing, not a Matt Murdock thing. Unlike his counterpart in the Marvel main universe of 616, who's driven by a passion for punishing the unjust, Goose Rider's battles take a light-hearted turn. His main challenges include finding suitable entertainment and enduring the playful taunts of kids who use the fire from his motorcycle to roast marshmallows. This dude is basically if Ghost Rider was a kid's party entertainer, which is just weird. In terms of powers, Goose can call upon the mischievous demons of heck to unleash their unique attacks on foes, such as dropping anvils from above. As with many obscure characters, Goose Rider hasn't really been in the comics since the late 80s, making his final appearance in issue 17 of Peter Porker the Spectacular Spider-Ham, but hey, I think that we need to see him come back. Alright, where's across the Ghost Rider verse? Huh? Am I right? Crickets. Penultimately, and at number 2, Red Hulk. In the 6-issue crossover, Circle of 4, Flash Thompson's Venom, Ghost Rider Alejandra Jones, Red Hulk Thaddeus Ross, and X-23's Laura Kinney converge in Las Vegas for personal reasons. Sinister casino owner Mr. Delgy is revealed to be Mephisto's demonic son Blackheart, leading to a chaotic situation where Alejandra accidentally opens a portal to hell, unleashing demons and malevolent beings, and Red Hulk and the others have to intervene. But the exposure to hell's indulgences corrupts Alejandra, making her steal the spirit for herself while Flash struggles to control his symbiote. Venom later steals the spirit, seeking that demonic power, but Blackheart intervenes and throws people out of windows and stuff. Alejandra survives. She joins forces with a massive behemoth that was now combining the powers of Red Hulk, Venom, and Ghost Rider all at once. Yeah, Thaddeus Ross got the Venom symbiote and the Ghost Rider spirit. They started racing up the side of a building on Thaddeus's motorcycle with his iconic line of "We are Smash for Vengeance." incarnations. I'm not even kidding, that's what he says. Then Las Vegas returned to normal, and then Red Hulk returned the symbiote and the Spirit of Vengeance. But yeah, Red Hulk as Venom and Ghost Rider, that's dope. And finally, into number 1, Agent Coulson. Spoiler alert for Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. if you care, I guess. But in the world of the MCU, the Spirit of Vengeance was trapped in the Dark Dimension within a region known as Hell. But he managed to escape and reach the Earth plane, making a vow that he would never go back to his former prison. The Spirit eventually bonded with Johnny Blaze, turning him into Ghost Rider, but one night in Los Angeles, Robbie Reyes and his brother Gabe were attacked. Their car crashed and Robbie was sent flying through the windshield and hit the ground, causing his death. A voice called out to him from the darkness and asked if it would truly do anything to save his brother and punish the men who attacked him. Robbie said yes, and boom, comes Ghost Rider. The Spirit and Reyes worked with S.H.I.E.L.D. in order to take down the baddie of season 4, which was Ada, once they returned from the Dark Dimension again. But Phil Coulson made a deal with the Spirit which temporarily granted him his demonic power. Okay, this is so dope, which he then used to successfully destroy Ada by incinerating her to ashes. The Spirit returned to Reyes afterwards, but come on, Agent Coulson with superpowers? We love Agent Coulson. The reason that they made Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. was to bring Coulson back, I feel. However, Coulson's possession of the Spirit of Vengeance caused the cancellation of the GH325 effects, which had been keeping him alive since his resurrection, which ended up dooming him, but not before he got the chance to go out and see the world. So he doesn't die in the series, but it just kind of makes him a normal dude again, so he will die eventually.
Number 10, the Spider. The Spider is basically an alternate version of Carnage that combines his character with that of Spider-Man's Peter Parker. He made his first appearance in Exiles issue number 12 in 2002, and hails from the reality of Earth 15. Here, the Spider is not a hero but a villain who was incarcerated for his crimes. Like Cletus, the Spider was also a redhead and also a mass murderer. What is it with redheads being presented as murderers or folks who are prone to extreme darkness in stories? He possessed the same powers as our 616's Carnage, but also combined with Spider-Man's powers, making him potentially even more deadly. And friends, before I move on to our next spot on this list, if you love what we do here at Top 10 Nerd, be sure to let us know by clicking that like button. Seriously, it does help us out. Number 9, Avengers Alliance. When it comes to the Carnage from Avengers Alliance, there are quite a few people that love this version of Carnage. Really, he's pretty much still the same old classic Cletus Cassidy, but I think the design and artwork here is what puts people over the moon for him in the game, or in the game that used to exist. Also, I think most people just miss the days of the Avengers Alliance game, since that game is no longer active. In the game, Carnage was firmly established as being more powerful as both Venom and Spider-Man, and even the two of them combined. While Avengers Alliance is no longer available to play after being shut down in 2016, Marvel Strike Force is available and is also a turn-based strategy game with its own Carnage, if you are one of the folks who missed the Alliance days. Honestly, it sounds like Marvel Strike Force is basically like what replaced it. Number 8, Maximum Carnage. Carnage has become so iconic as a character that obviously he doesn't just exist in the comics and the animated series and even in live action. He also has shown up in various video games as well, including the Maximum Carnage video game from way back in the 90s. Yeah, he's been doing video games for a long time. Oh boy, what a time that game was. This side-scrolling adventure had you playing as the various heroes from the comics in an attempt to take down villains Carnage, Shriek, Demogoblin, Doppelganger, and Carrion. The game, like the comic book storyline of the same name, is iconic, beginning with Carnage's escape from prison and with him teaming up with Shriek. They then go on to run into Doppelganger, who they kind of adopt into their group, with Shriek kind of treating Doppelganger like he's their child. Carnage here decides to go on the offensive after his escape from prison, hoping to take his fight in this side-scrolling world straight to Spider-Man and Venom. And that's where you as the player come in, obviously. Number 7, Let There Be Carnage. Was Woody Harrelson a weird choice in terms of the casting of Cletus Cassidy? A little bit. But was there potential there? Most definitely. Woody Harrelson is one of those performers where I generally tend to really enjoy his performances, and I think he does unhinged characters pretty well, honestly. So there was a lot of potential when it came to him taking on the role in Sony's sequel to Venom, Let There Be Carnage. Also, Andy Serkis directing, I thought that would be a good time. Unfortunately, that film just, in my opinion, was not very good. The corny elements were just too overwhelming for me to really enjoy it, although I do still think it had some value in terms of just like pure, raw entertainment. If you want to be entertained, it'll probably do that for you. I think it's always hard when you're bringing a character like Carnage to live action though, because it makes everything that he is so much more real. It's hard for you to connect with someone like Cletus, so you either have to make him the best bad guy around and make him really, really terrible and unrelatable, which is usually done really well in the comics, I'd say, or you have to build some kind of bridge for the audience to connect with him, which honestly, good luck in that regard, and I do think the movie kind of tries to do that a little bit, and it's a disservice, I think, a little. Still, it was cool to see the attempt, and I did like some of the stuff that they did with him in terms of the approaches to the fights and, you know, his views of the world. Number 6. Spider Carnage. For a brief time, Ben Reilly was actually Carnage, or a version of Carnage, rather. He became known as Spider Carnage. This happened after the Carnage symbiote had escaped Ravencroft. Ben Reilly actually chose, as Spider-Man, to put himself in the path of Carnage, sacrificing himself to bond with it so that he could protect others from the sadistic symbiote. He was like, I will be the only one, that way no one else will be hurt by it. However, this wouldn't last too long, only a few issues. John Jameson, son of J. Jonah Jameson, would help to free Ben Reilly's Spider-Man by targeting him with microwave radiation. Actually, that would really hurt. I would not want to be microwaved. Still, the idea of Carnage wielding Ben Reilly is pretty cool to me. While Carnage is definitely one of the most evil Spider-Man villains around, he also happens to be one of the most powerful symbiotes as well, with his strength at times rivaling even that of Venom. In fact, I would say most days it's rivaling Venom. Maybe not now, but in the past for sure. Number 5. Carnage 1602. This version of Carnage hails from the reality of Earth 311. What is Earth 311? Well, it is considered to be the comic book home of the 1602 reality. If you aren't familiar with 1602, let me get you up to speed. In this reality, many of the classic heroes and villains we know and love from the present day in the Marvel comic book continuity were sent back in time to come to prominence instead during the year 1602. This was done as part of Kilgrave, the Purple Man's plot to remove Captain America in another timeline where Kilgrave basically became president of the United States. He was like, look, I don't want to deal with Captain America, so rather than killing him and making him a martyr, Kilgrave decided to displace him in time. So instead, heroes like Captain America, Doctor Strange, Nick Fury, Spider-Man, and Black Widow existed way before they would normally back in the past. The version of Carnage that exists there was Canis Cassidy, who claimed to be possessed by a demon. He wouldn't appear in the standard 1602 series, but instead was introduced in an alternate reality story featured in Amazing Spider-Man issue number 1 from 2015. Number 4. Aunt May. Yep, there is an alternate version of both Aunt May and Carnage combined together out there. This version of Aunt May is sadly a lot more evil than her usual self. Or maybe not so sadly if you are into an idea of an evil Aunt May. She appears in the 2019 Spider-Verse comic where she faces off against Spider-Man and Miles Morales. Spider-Man, who is the spider-themed hero of Reality 3123, is forced to channel the power of all her heroic alternates across the multiverse in order to defeat this version of Carnage. So while she might be Aunt May, that doesn't mean she is any less ruthless or horrifying than, say, the Cletus Cassidy of Earth 616. Number 3. Spider-Man/Batman. One of the craziest appearances of Carnage has to come from the crossover comic Spider-Man/Batman. If you're wondering how these two heroes from two completely different publishers managed to get together in a comic book, the answer pretty much is amalgam. This is around that time, and DC and Marvel were doing a bunch of cool crossover things. Back in the day, Marvel and their distinguished competition were actually a lot more willing to team up if it meant telling cool stories by teaming up cool characters who you'd otherwise never see meet each other. I'm sure the money they made from these crossovers also didn't hurt either. In the Spider-Man/Batman team up, Cletus ends up seemingly being cured, but has the chip that essentially cured him disabled by his symbiote, returning him back to Carnage. Once free, Carnage kidnaps Joker and basically does the same for him, because he was also, cured, proposing that the two of them should team up. Doesn't work out too great, but it's a pretty wild team up idea. Number 2. Carnage Cosmic. There was a time when Carnage actually ended up going cosmic in terms of his power source and level. The Carnage symbiote at one point jumped ship to Norrin Radd, one of the Heralds of Galactus. While in the main continuity the bond between them did not last, there is a what-if comic that imagines what could have happened had the bond between them remained. In the end, in this alternate reality, in order to prevent Carnage from having too much power and control over him, because Silver Surfer was struggling, he ended up regaining control temporarily and use that time to hurl himself, along with Carnage, into the sun, sacrificing himself. However, apparently that wasn't actually the end, as somehow the two of them survive, reappearing again in the 2013 comic Longshot Saves the Marvel Universe issue number 3, which I didn't even know was a thing, but apparently it is, and now I'm curious and I kinda wanna read it. This happened probably thanks to Silver Surfer's powers and not Carnage, who, you know, is pretty susceptible to fire damage. But maybe the power cosmic somehow saved them. Number 1. Grendel symbiote. While this is still technically Cletus Cassidy as Carnage, some may consider the Grendel symbiote to be a different version of Carnage altogether, since the Carnage symbiote itself at this point in the story is kind of dead and gone. And honestly, so is Cletus. He basically is a corpse that was revived and put inside a symbiote so he could be brought back to life. And I guess maybe if there's a little bit of blood left in him, Carnage could come back through that. I don't know. He still has consciousness and everything, but I'm not sure if we'd quite call him alive here, and I'm not sure if we'd quite call this, you know, original Carnage. Definitely it's a different version. This version of Carnage is probably one of the most horrifying when you consider its purpose. The Grendel symbiote takes the place of Carnage and is used by Cletus to hunt down all the codices on Earth, which exist inside former hosts of symbiote spines. Acquiring the codices bolsters his own power, with the main goal being to wake up Null, god of the symbiotes, one of the biggest bads around, which is supposed to happen once all the codices have been gathered and combined.
Alright, coming in at number 10 today is The Reigning. The Reigning storyline happened in Thor Volume 2 from 2003 to 2004, and it basically saw a future where Odin passed at the hands of Surtur and Thor took his place, but then took Asgard to Earth and essentially put the entire world under his rule for hundreds of years. It created a dystopia where Asgardians were the elite and humans just tried to survive. Loki in all of this played the role of chief advisor and prime minister of the magistrate presiding over New Asgard, and he seemed to have become Sorcerer Supreme along the way, or at least he had Doctor Strange's stuff. But with Thor becoming a shell of who he once was, Loki had been secretly providing, as well as profiting off of, internal strife in order to consolidate power for himself. Classic Loki. He was responsible for slaying Balder, the Avengers, Scarlet Witch, and Jane Foster. He did a whole heck of a lot more, but he absolutely paid for it before this reality was erased by Thor himself.
It denied Crocodile Loki. In this timeline, Loki was either born or turned into an alligator, but you know, of course I'm going to talk about Crocodile Loki. Not alligator Loki, there's a difference. One day he reportedly ate a neighbor's cat and then was detained by the Time Variance Authority for creating a Nexus event, which caused a detour in their version of the sacred timeline, because he wasn't supposed to eat the cat. Oh wait, no, he was supposed to eat another neighbor's cat. Yeah, apparently that's going to ruin the universe. You ate the wrong cat. I don't know how that's possible when it's a sacred timeline, but you know what, that's aside the point. They needed to get the merchandising in there. He was then subsequently pruned and sent to the Void, where he met Kid Loki, Classic Loki, Boastful Loki, and yeah, you know, it's the classic Loki tale, but as a crocodile. Joys. As they made their way across the Void, Loki demanded an explanation for his current whereabouts, forcing Kid Loki to silence him, which is just funny, because this freaking alligator could talk, but oh well. Yeah, it's Loki but as an alligator, okay? That's why he's on the list. There's not much more than that. It's just funny.
Number 8, Raised by Frost Giants. A perfect what-if tale. It's almost surprising it wasn't done before this point. In What If Thor in 2018, we get the story of what if Thor was raised by Frost Giants instead of Loki being raised by Asgardians. Simple, but brilliant. Laufey, the king of the Frost Giants, defeats Odin in their battle super long ago, and just as Odin took the infant Loki, Laufey takes the kid Thor and raises him as his own. Loki is obviously here too, and like usual, Thor and Loki form a pretty tight bond as adopted brothers. Unfortunately though, due to Thor's strength and skill in battle, not to mention his fondness for summoning the power of lightning, he is praised among the Frost Giants and by Laufey himself, who begins to completely forget Loki, his actual true son. Instead, Loki finds the captured Freya in the dungeons and she teaches him how to use magic. Loki eventually busts her out of prison and together they attempt to escape to Midgard. They go to the ruins of Asgard first and attempt to repair the Rainbow Bridge until Thor and Laufey show up. Loki ends the life of his father while Thor unknowingly ends his mother with a blast from his giant ice hammer Ice Crusher. Thor almost takes out his brother as well, but at the last minute, he lets him go. We don't know what happens next, only that Loki went to Midgard, had kids and a family, and apparently became a hero. So, yeah.
And it's 7 Earth X. The entity that would evolve into Loki originated on a distant planet under the manipulation of the Celestials. Through their reproductive methods, the Celestials infused an embryo within Loki's world, altering the genetics of its inhabitants to grant them protective abilities for said embryo. Over time though, Loki and its people underwent various mutations that led them to lose their distinct forms, becoming defined by external perceptions. So it's kind of like an eye is in the beauty of the beholder thing, except it's with people. Having fled their planet, they arrived on Earth and encountered the ancient Norse civilization, particularly a storyteller named Donnerson, and he played a crucial role in shaping Loki and the other Asgardians, believing them to be gods of their legends, you know, just on Earth this time. Eventually, Donnerson merged with two Asgardians and assumed the role of Odin, but yeah, Loki lost all awareness of his true origins. But like, yeah, it's weird. It's definitely a weird one.
Number 6, Boastful Loki. Not much is known about the history of this Loki for certain, and that's what makes him so intriguing to me. He claimed to have defeated his world's Captain America and Iron Man and collected all 6 Infinity Stones, but his tales of exploits were not taken seriously even by other versions of himself. He also wields a very strange looking hammer that seems to be made out of a chunk of metal I-beam with a piston rod for a handle. I think that may be the part that has me the most curious of everything about him, to be completely honest. In any case though, he was arrested by the Time Variance Authority and pruned, ending up in the Void at the end of time, and he has teamed up with classic Kid and Alligator Loki, like we talked about before he betrayed them, making a deal with President Loki. Spoilers, sorry.
Halfway through into number 5, Sorcerer Supreme. Yeah, you thought that Alligator Loki was scary? What about Sorcerer Supreme Loki? That's true terror. Following his dethronement in the 2017 arc Loki Sorcerer Supreme, Doctor Strange was stripped of his title, his abilities, and his aide Zelma, leading to him becoming a veterinarian for elderly talking dogs, specifically bats. His talking dog. After a failed encounter with Loki resulted in Bats' death, Strange ends up pulling a John Wick and seeks aid from a greater force to counter the God of Mischief. That's what those movies are about, right? While Loki ranks among Marvel's most supreme magic users, his power alone can't really match Doctor Strange. But man, yeah, with the Sorcerer Supreme powers, he's gonna go kind of nuts. And then, like I said, there's John Wick Vengeance, and then obviously it doesn't last forever, but like, yeah, Loki with Doctor Strange powers, that's going on the list. No way that's not going on the list.
Number 4, Avenger Prime. Avengers Forever is a true treat for anyone who loves the multiverse and seeing alternate versions of different Avengers. It's truly a lot of fun. Robbie Reyes, the All-Rider, or he was a Ghost Rider, but he became All-Rider, is pulling together this awesome Avengers team that faces up against the Doom Above All, an army of Mephistos and Doom's Masters of Evil. The team is super cool, but during a critical battle against multiple versions of Doctor Doom and Mephisto, the multiversal Avengers seem to have no magic users, which is super weird, but then the Avenger Prime comes waltzing out of a portal stating that he is the Prime Avenger because you can't have the Avengers without a Loki to bring them together, and it's Loki as Avenger Prime, and it's super cool. This Loki became king of Asgard and a hero, and then he discovered the other Lokis in the universe were bad guys who always fought the Avengers. So he made sure his Avengers never existed and fought all of Earth's threats himself, which led to the end of life in his universe, including his own. But then he woke up in the God Quarry, where he came into contact with alternate versions of Avengers, creating the multiversal Avengers and an Avengers Tower inside the God Quarry to run the whole thing. That's all I have to say about that.
In at 3, DB Cooper. DB Cooper is an alias associated with an unidentified man who commandeered Northwest Orient Airlines Flight 305, a Boeing 727 airplane. In November of 1971, Loki lost a bet to Thor, and as a result, he had to visit Earth in order to pull off a heist. He hijacked the Northwest Orient Airlines Flight 305 in the United States under the pseudonym of DB Cooper, informed Florence Schaffner that he had a bomb and demanded $200,000 in ransom. To comply with the hijackers' demands, the plane landed, exchanged passengers on the plane for the ransom money and backup parachutes, and then they went back up in the air. Loki then collected the ransom money and proceeded to jump out of the airplane with a parachute, only to be transported back to Asgard by Heimdall using the Bifrost Bridge, leaving only a few $20 bills in his wake, which is where the mystery comes comes from, because if you don't know, DB Cooper jumped out of the plane, never to be seen again, but they couldn't find a body or the briefcase, but they found bills in the water somehow. So yeah, if you were wondering, it was Loki, at least in the MCU, although probably here too. We just haven't figured out that they're real yet.
Number 2, Ultimate Loki. Loki, Laufey's son in the main Marvel universe, is a pretty dastardly devil. He's always got schemes on schemes and is just doing what gods of mischief do best, using his sorcery, but he's also somewhat redeemable. The Loki, Odin's son of Marvel's Ultimate Universe, is kinda just a madman, but one with the ability to warp reality. He could retcon history into anything he desired by either creating events that never happened or erasing events as if they never happened. He could create copies of himself, change the color of the skies, render himself near impervious to harm even from Thor's hammer, and summon armies of monsters. One of the first things this Loki does while a member of the Warriors 3 alongside Thor and their brother Balder is visit his giantess mother, steal the Norn stones, and completely take the life of Balder. He then took on the guise of Baron Zemo during World War II and led an attack on Asgard with frost giants, Germans, and some super soldier Germans that he created. This got him banished to the room without doors, just like he planned, apparently. He was then eventually freed from the room, and unlike his brothers who had been reborn as mortal men, Loki was still a god, and an incredibly powerful one. He would be one of the main threats faced by the Ultimates when they formed, but was eventually depowered by Odin, so sucks to suck. Actually, I'm pretty sure he came back, so I guess it sucks for us.
And finally, in at number 1, Necro God Loki. If you don't understand why that's number 1 just from the name alone, then yeah, I guess I'll explain it. Originating from All Black and the infamous Necroverse, this incarnation of Loki stands as the most formidable and the most badass. Following the closure of Agent of Asgard, Kid Loki, and King Loki's narratives, Loki becomes consumed by vengeance against all of life. Yeah, when you're tired of fighting against your brother, why not fight life? In a catastrophic turn though, he orchestrates a cosmic scale level devastation of just everything, binding with All Black, the Necro Sword, by deceiving Ego, the Necro world. He turns Ego into the sword's other end, acquiring immense power, and yeah, notably Necro God Loki clashes with old King Thor, resulting in the extinguishing of the sun, and he ruthlessly wipes out Earth's entire population. Yeah. What the hell? He can also time travel, because why not throw that in there? They're already gonna wipe out Earth. There's no stakes anymore. But yeah, just yeah.
Number 10, DCU/DCEU. One of my all-time favorite versions of Harley Quinn, of course, comes to us from the DC live-action universe. This version is played by Margot Robbie, who I think I am quickly becoming a lifelong fan of. Every time I see a new film where Margot is involved, I pretty much love it. Okay, maybe except the first Suicide Squad film. But at the same time, I do still love parts of that film, with Margot's Harley Quinn being one of the main highlights for me. I think when it comes to Margot Robbie, just her commitment and love of the characters that she plays, no matter who they are, is what really draws me in, and her portrayal of Harley Quinn is no exception. She definitely gives it her all and really seems to love playing the character and being involved in a lot of the stunts, or at least as many of the stunts as production will allow her to participate in. She definitely also has stunt doubles for stunts, which are deemed, of course, too risky. That's very common in productions. Still, it's clear that Margot has fun as Harley, which also adds to the portrayal, as I feel like Harley Quinn is so often looking for the silver linings in her life and trying herself to have fun, even when she finds herself in a less than ideal situation. And this really rings true with Margot Robbie's portrayal. And friends, before we move on to our next spot on this list, if you love what we do here at Top 10 Nerd, why not consider subscribing? Click that subscribe button, do it if you haven't already, because if you have, then you'll be unsubscribed, so then don't click it. But if you haven't, click it. Number 9, Bizarro Harley. Bizarro Harley didn't last too long, only a single issue. But she was memorable to me when I read her, which is why I'm including her here. I like how she basically tries to tell her off her original self here, which would be her main continuity version at the time, the version from New Earth, that version of Harley Quinn. Bizarro Harley says to her that she might actually be the Bizarro version, based on her messed up relationship with the Joker and their history and how crazy she herself is. In the end though, Harley Quinn defeats Bizarro Harley Harley Quinn by making her contradict her own Bizarro programming, thereby causing her to self-destruct. That's why she's only around for an issue. But still, I like the concept. Number 8. Harley Sin. Harley Sin does not get enough love in the comics. She acts as kind of a foil for Harley Quinn, or at least has in the past. In the main continuity, I believe, although with Harley Quinn comics it's always hard to tell if we're really in the main continuity or not because things can get kinda weird and kinda meta. Sin made peace with Harley. However, she recently then reappeared in the Harley Quinn and the Birds of Prey comic, which I don't think is part of the main continuity because it's Black Label, but then again, it could be. And in that story, she was once again a villain to Harley, so she flipped back. Harley Sin wanted to join up with the Harley Quinn's gang of Harleys initially, attempting to join her crew, but she didn't make the cut. Number 7. Gang of Harleys. Not only are there alternate versions of Harley that exist throughout the multiverse, but even within the main continuity itself, Harley Quinn actually has alternates. Remember how I mentioned that Harley Sin once tried out for Harley Quinn's Gang of Harleys? Well, that is still a thing. Harley's Gang of Harleys is made up of other Harleys who Quinn herself handpicked. I gotta say, I love them, and I love that in the comics, this is her crew. I'm not up to date on the Harley Quinn animated series right now, I'm a little bit behind, I need to catch up, but as much as I love Harley's crew in that universe, and I really do, I hope we also get a little nod to the comic book main continuity crew she has and has had with the Gang of Harleys. The Gang of Harleys exists in the Prime Earth continuity, and currently the members include Carly Quinn, Hannah Quinn, Harvey Quinn, Harlem Quinn, Harley Queens, Bolly Quinn, and Coach. Number 6. Batman 66. Have you ever wondered what Harley Quinn would be like were she to have existed back in the 1966 Batman live action series with Adam West? Well, wonder no longer. We have the answer to that in the form of a comic, and if you were wondering, yes, Harley Quinn does fit pretty perfectly in this world. She herself can be pretty silly, and the Batman 66 universe itself is also prone to being kinda goofy and over the top in the best of ways. So despite being created in the 90s in the animated Batman series, she actually feels right at home, I would say, in the comic based off of the live action 60s series. Number 5. White Knight. White Knight Harley Quinn is another beast altogether. This version of the character actually has a pretty tragic backstory when it comes to a relationship with the Joker. Instead of him being a deranged criminal from the start, he actually is shown in a more sympathetic light, with it quickly becoming evident based on his and Harley's story that he was mentally unwell and simply just needed some help. After Jack, which is Joker's name here, returns to Harley, seemingly cured, Batman is the one who is more painted as the villain of the story in this reality. In the end though, Jack does give in to the darkness and he ends up kinda being swallowed up by it, leaving Harley alone with 2 babies on the way. What does she do after this loss? Well, she keeps fighting. In her most recent series, White Knight Presents Harley Quinn, she becomes a psychological consultant for the GCPD, helping them to investigate a string of murders as they attempt to catch the killer, with her doing profile work for them, and also kinda like, you know, just being a vigilante. Batman even makes her a suit. Oh, I love the fashion in that series. It looks so good. Number 4. Black Label Birds of Prey. I'm not really sure where this exists in terms of the DC universe or perhaps multiverse, but I'm just gonna assume, considering it feels like it's inspired by the Birds of Prey film, that it's set in its own universe. I was really excited for this Harley Quinn and the Birds of Prey comic when it was first announced. Amanda Connor and Jim Palmiotti worked on the book, and I just love them together with Harley Quinn. They do such great work. This comic was also Black Label and therefore could afford to get more raunchy than the standard DC comic fare. Here, Harley Quinn sort of teams up with the Birds of Prey to take down the Joker. Well, basically the Birds of Prey want her to leave Gotham for her own safety and their own peace of mind, whereas Harley wants to team up and kick butt, so they're not really fully united in this comic, but that's what makes it more fun. The series itself is awesome, and Harley here is also hilarious and epic, but I gotta say it was slow in regards to its release schedule from issue to issue, so that was rough if you were reading it as it came out, but if you just go back and read it now, it's pretty fantastic. Number 3. Batman Arkham. This version of Harley Quinn comes to us not from a comic or a TV series or even a film, but instead from a video game, or rather a whole series of video games. The Batman Arkham games actually played as important a role to the way Harley is presented in live action animation and comics today as her first animated appearance did in regards to shaping her first comic book appearance. When we talk about alternate versions of Harley, she really is a character where her alternate alternate selves actually helped to further define and establish the nuances of her main continuity character. Harley's appearance in the Batman Arkham games made her even more sexy and powerful, I'd say, and also saw changes to her costume that definitely influenced her comic book and live action appearances. Also, you really can't go wrong with Tara Strong or Arlene Sorkin's performances when it comes to Harley in these games. Number 2. Batman the Animated Series. Technically, this version of Harley Quinn could be described as the original Harley Quinn, voiced by Arlene Sorkin. Batman the Animated Series is where Harley Quinn first appeared. She was originally intended to be more of a smaller role, a temporary girlfriend and accomplice to Mark Hamill's Joker. However, when we talk about alternates here on Top 10 Nerd, we're usually comparing different versions of the character to their mainstay comic book counterpart. As such, I'm including Sorkin's portrayal here, despite it being the first and possibly the most iconic appearance of this character. This is always the version folks most want to see me cosplay as, to be honest. I don't have that one yet though. I should do an animated series Harley though. I love Harley. You can never have too many Harley cosplays in my... I don't have that one yet though. I should do an animated series Harley though. I love Harley. You can never have too many Harley cosplays in my mind. Number 1. Harley Quinn the Animated Series. Harley Quinn the Animated Series is probably one of the coolest versions of Harley we have thus far. Also, her series just slays me. It is so much fun, which is also probably why I love this version of Harley Quinn so much and had to give her my top spot. Harley Quinn in the animated series is voiced by Kaley Cuoco. For a while, some believe there was actually beef between Cuoco and Margot Robbie, who plays the live action version of Harley on the big screen, but it turned out this was all fabricated and hearsay. Of course, there is always room for more Harleys, and I think these two ladies are both just happy to be playing the character. There's no real beef between them. The one thing Kaley does that differs drastically from how Harley is usually portrayed, or rather I guess that she doesn't do, is the accent. Kaley does not do Harley's classic Brooklyn accent. For some, this is actually a deal breaker, but I still love Kaley's work voicing the character myself. Also, how can you not love this show? It's so good. I know I'm not caught up, but I bet it's still good. I bet it's still amazing. Let me know in the comments. No spoilers, but if you're caught up, still loving it, bet you are.
Number 10. The Age of Apocalypse. When the Mutant Legion decided that he was going to go back in time to try and end the life of the villain Magneto before he could become what he was destined to be, he happened to accidentally take out the wrong mutant, his own father, Charles Xavier. This created a separate new reality where it was Magneto who founded the X-Men, and without the protection of Xavier, Apocalypse began his plan for world domination 20 years early. Turns out, that was the move, as doing this allowed him to take control of the entirety of North America and begin his plan of survival of the fittest by attempting to cull all of humanity. Apocalypse with his forces conquered Japan, Wakanda, and Atlantis, destroyed half of South America and Central America, and took out almost all mutants with telepathic or time travel abilities. With the help of his new horsemen, Mr. Sinister, Abyss, Mikhail Rasputin, and his son Nemesis, Apocalypse ruled over America while trying to defeat his only real resistance, the X-Men and the European Human High Council. He eventually managed to capture Magneto and his son Charles, although the rest of the resistance was able to break into Apocalypse's citadel in the ruins of Manhattan. With his last bit of strength, Magneto, furious at Apocalypse for terrorizing the world, magnetically tore his body in half, and it was so cool. I'm leaving out a lot, but the Age of Apocalypse is pretty huge, and I've only got like a minute here, so we're moving on. Coming in at number 9, it's the Mangaverse. In Marvel's arguably underrated Mangaverse, Apocalypse is the main enemy of the Avengers, and really, the whole entire world. His main goal, instead of survival of the fittest, was to straight up cleanse the world of the weak that were draining the world of its resources to maintain their pathetic lives. So similar, but kinda still different. This Apocalypse had his horsemen in the form of Archangel, Mr. Sinister, Emma Frost, and Juggernaut, which I think we should admit is quite the stacked up team. The last time the Avengers fought this Apocalypse, they barely escaped with their lives. Given Apocalypse's control of technology, Tony Stark kept the existence of his robots secret even from the rest of the Avengers until he had no choice because of the Hulk. Apocalypse learned of the location of the Avengers' robots via his Phalanx spies, and so he dispatched his horsemen to the Avengers' secret mountain base in China to seize the robots. This went pretty badly for the bad guys, so then Then, Apocalypse left Egypt and went to China himself, where he confronted the Avengers mano a mano, or mano-y team, I guess. Their attacks had zero effect on him, forcing them to combine their vehicles into the ultimate Iron Man, aka an Avengers Iron Man Zord. The best part about this Apocalypse is that he has special attacks like the Apocalypse Beam and Armageddon Kick, and just like martial arts. It's kinda cool, I guess. Number 8, Ultimate. Apocalypse in the Ultimate Universe is actually quite strange. When Apocalypse first showed up here, he was actually a vision or apparition who could only be seen by the schizophrenic Mr. Sinister. This Lord Apocalypse that seemed to live only inside of Sinister's head and as a stuffed effigy apparently made Sinister his herald and gave Sinister a mission to take the lives of 10 innocent mutants in order to bring about Apocalypse's manifestation. After Sinister launched a failed attack on the Xavier Institute for Higher Learning to complete the task, he was captured and imprisoned by S.H.I.E.L.D. While in his cell, Apocalypse came to Sinister again and commanded him to choke himself, which he failed to do, but would eventually succeed at when he turned up passed out in the afterlife with his t-shirt lodged in his throat. Kinda bad. But that was all actually a ruse. Apocalypse was pleased by Sinister's ability to get out of custody, and so he managed to return Sinister to life, and so Sinister set out again to eliminate mutants in order to obtain the 10 he was supposed to get for his master in the first place. A number of these he accomplished when he launched an attack on the Morlocks in their home, and when the X-Men arrived as his final offering to Apocalypse, Sinister took the life of Angel, even though the X-Men tried their best to stop this. Having completed his mission, Sinister then just rose up into the air and then up to the surface of New York, where he physically transformed into Apocalypse. It turns out he was not crazy at all, not by a long shot, as Apocalypse proved more than capable of taking on the X-Men and the Morlocks with his ability to steal other mutant powers and disable them. He ripped off the arm of Wolverine and caused the mutants in the city to all begin attacking each other and the other heroes. The Fantastic Four showed up but were attacked by the controlled X-Men, and eventually, thanks to carefully thought out plans by Cable and Bishop, plus some intervention by Jean Grey as the Phoenix, a complete catastrophe was avoided and Apocalypse was defeated. Boom. That was long. Number 7, Earth 4935. As some of you may know, Apocalypse and the mutant Nathan Summers, aka Cable, have a lot of history together. When Nathan was a freshly born little bean, he was infected with the techno-organic virus by Apocalypse as a test of his worthiness to become a host for Apocalypse. When the X-Men fought off Apocalypse and recovered Nathan, Cyclops begrudgingly agreed to send Nathan away to the future with the hope of him being cured. Earth 4932, or Earth Ascani, is that future. Taking place in the late 36th century, where Apocalypse ruled the entire Earth, Nathan arrived and he was immediately cloned just in case he could not be saved. When this Apocalypse found out that Nathan was in the present day, he sent out his forces to capture Nathan, but he had actually taken the clone instead. That clone would be raised up by Apocalypse with the hopes of him becoming the next host body for Apocalypse. Apocalypse named that clone Strife, after a villain he fought in the modern day, who was actually an adult version of this kid, which really confuses things kind of, just a tiny bit. Since his current body had grown old and feeble, Apocalypse raised Strife to be extremely powerful as he planned to transfer his consciousness and power into Strife's body. Now, the real Nathan, who was being raised to be Cable by Jean Grey and Cyclops in this future world, ended up disrupting Apocalypse's plan, with the teenage Cable defeating this old and decrepit Apocalypse in combat. Number 6, AD 3167. In this alternate reality, which appeared in Extraordinary X-Men number 11 from June 2016, Apocalypse showed up in the 21st century, bringing with him the Great Trials. This event saw the end of entire civilizations and races on Earth and left only the Atlanteans, the Inhumans, an AI race known as the Stark Self, the Wakandans, the Mystics, and the Maloids, and they all lived under Apocalypse's rule on Omega World. This was a huge structure composed of bubble worlds that preserved what little remained of Earth after Apocalypse's ascension. The part that will blow your mind is that Omega World itself, the entire structure, is Apocalypse. He still had a human form, and that essentially functioned as the Omega World's heart, keeping the whole place functional. At the same time, his horsemen functioned as Omega World's like antibodies, being sent out to cleanse the structure of anything that could harm their master. The mutant Colossus and a bunch of young mutants mutants were transported to this world, where Colossus was captured and became another of Apocalypse's horsemen. Apocalypse was now after an ark being held by the mutant kids that contained thousands of mutant embryos. But he should have left it alone because it got him a good old sword in the back by the end of the story, so sucks to suck. Number 5. Dark Ages. In this alternate Earth, after a battle with an ancient galaxy-attacking robot called the Unmaker in the core of the Earth, because that's where battles take place I guess, Doctor Strange opened a portal that created an EMP that would defeat the Unmaker, and this totally worked, but Strange died before he could close the portal. This resulted in an absolutely humongous EMP that shut off all of the electricity on Earth. Now this led to various wars in the post-apocalypse, taking out tons of people, and eventually, after things calmed down a little bit, people lived in various little tiny communities surviving against attacks from vampires and werewolves and all that fun stuff. In Europe, however, the mutant apocalypse had taken over, and using the Purple Man, he brainwashed geniuses from around the world and then began attempting to reawaken the Unmaker for his own villainous deeds, causing all of Earth's heroes to band together to try and bring him down. Number 4. House of M. There was a small chunk of time in Marvel Comics where the Scarlet Witch went just a tiny little bit out of whack and maybe changed all of reality to make Magneto the ruler of the world. With a mutant like Apocalypse running around though, Magneto would have some competition. Apocalypse in this reality met Magneto after a group of his mutants were taken out by Sentinels and he proposed an alliance. But that didn't last very long, as Apocalypse disapproved of Magneto's mercy towards humanity and those who Apocalypse considered weak and unworthy. The two fought, but Magneto, being in this alternate reality controlled by the Scarlet Witch, emerged as the leader of the mutant resistance, but still, after a Sentinel attack, Magneto declared war on humanity yet again. Apocalypse, since his defeat, would continue to serve Magneto, freeing a number of imprisoned mutants in exchange for control of the whole of northern Africa. Later on in the timeline, Magneto would give Apocalypse the task of eliminating the Black Panther, and so Apocalypse would lead Sabretooth, Iceman, Angel, and Nightcrawler in an attack on Wakanda, and that is a really cool team. They didn't really expect Prince Namor and Emperor Sunfire to be there though, assisting the Black Panther and Storm. During their battle, Apocalypse went looking for the Panther inside his castle, only to find Black Bolt, who destroyed Apocalypse with a little tiny whisper. Very cool. Number 3. Messiah War. In the alternate future setting of the awesome Messiah War story, Strife, the uninfected clone of Cable and an incredibly powerful mutant, has ruled the world after Apocalypse's hibernation. In this reality, Apocalypse was attacked and defeated by the combined efforts of Strife and Bishop. Nearing the end times, he used his remaining powers to telepathically call on what seems to be his favorite horseman, Angel, who at the time was a member of X-Force. Apocalypse commanded Angel to end Apocalypse's life since he views himself as weak, but surprisingly, Angel refuses to do so and instead gives Apocalypse pieces of his metallic wings. They're the same metallic wings that Apocalypse gave to him in the first place. Apocalypse used those metal feathers to restore his own powers, and now, back to his full self, he convinces Angel that they should take down Strife together, as a team. Both of them headed for Strife's citadel and defeated him pretty easily, but then Apocalypse took interest in the mutant Messiah, Hope Summers, and said that one day she will become a vessel for his soul, and it was then that Cable and X-Force surrounded him and demanded the surrender of Hope. Thanks to Angel sparing and restoring Apocalypse's life, he agreed to stand down, but warned Cable that he will be coming back for the child, and Apocalypse is last seen dragging Strife to be his next vessel for his soul. Sounds terrifying, but it's how it goes, I guess. Number 2. Archangel. Apocalypse, one of those who agreed to be the instrument of the Celestials on Earth to ensure the natural evolution of superior species, used the Death Seed to transform individuals into his various horsemen of death. One of the most famous of those individuals was Warren Worthington III, aka Angel, who then became Archangel. After Apocalypse's demise, it triggered an ascension protocol within Warren's Death Seed that turned him into Archangel. This protocol began to transform Warren, essentially, into a new Apocalypse to fill the place that Apocalypse held as the one charged by the Celestials with aiding the natural evolution of superior species on Earth. I hope I never have to say that sentence again. Trying to delay or prevent this from happening, X-Force went into the multiverse multiverse to find the Age of Apocalypse reality to obtain a life seed that would destroy Warren's death seed. But psych! That whole plan was under the advice of Dark Beast, who being a villain was working for Archangel the whole time, and they ambushed X-Force. The life seed was crucial in his plan to scour all life from the world, replacing it with new life grown from the life seed. The mutant Psylocke then decided to appeal to whatever was left of Warren inside this new Apocalypse form, and he made her into his Horseman Death. But luckily, she has Jean Grey around, who broke her free of Archangel's control, and she stuck him with a life seed, which completely ended his life and then rebirthed him as a new person, and he was all good again. Coming in at number 1, it's the Apocalypse Twins. During Warren's time as Apocalypse, he may or may not have gotten into a little business with the Horseman of Pestilence known as Ishusumi, which, after his defeat, happened to produce 2 little terrors known as Uriel and Iman, aka Archangel's heirs, aka the Apocalypse Twins. In a slightly unexpected turn of events here, they were stolen away by Kang the Conqueror of all people, who feared what they would become, and the 3 of them disappeared into the time stream. As you could expect, growing up under Kang the Conqueror was extremely rough, as he was horrible to them, and so the twins grew up to understandably be pretty horrible themselves. After Archangel was defeated, the son of Apocalypse, William Rawlson, attempted to gain his own death seed from the Celestial Gardener and become the new Apocalypse. This is when the Apocalypse Twins showed back up out of the time stream, wielding the Asgardian axe Yarnbjorn, which they stole from Kang the Conqueror, and they sent that Celestial to its form of an afterlife. They next attacked the Peak, aka the headquarters of Sword, and then following that they took out most of Clan Akaba and destroyed Akaba City. They then used life seeds and death seeds harvested from the Gardener to resurrect Sentry, Banshee, Grim Reaper, and Daken as the 4 Horsemen of Death, which was totally awesome. But then, they framed the Earth for the passing of the Celestials so that Exitard the Executioner, another Celestial, would destroy it, and they almost got away with it too if it weren't for the time-traveling Kang the Conqueror and some X-Men, always saving the day.
Number 10, Deadpool Samurai. So I actually have this manga. Well, I have part 1 of it, the first volume, I think. I haven't read it yet, but I have flipped through it, and honestly, it looks pretty interesting. It caught my eye when I was at an Indigo, and I was like, I have to read this at some point. This is the Deadpool of Earth 346. He is actually a character in a manga that Marvel made in collaboration with Shonen Jump Plus. If you can believe that. He was created by Sanshiro Kasama and Hikaru Usagi. He made his first appearance in Marvel times Shonen Jump Plus Super Collaboration issue number 5. Marvel has actually collaborated with Shonen a few different times. I think Deadpool's appearance was part of their 3rd collaboration together, which to me is crazy. And in terms of his own series, Deadpool Samurai, he's had actually 15 volumes so far. That's wild. With the most recent one coming out last year in 2022 in June. Must be good if they got at least 15 volumes of it. Someone must be loving this. And friends, before we move on to our next spot on this list, if you love what we do here at Top 10 Nerd and you're not already, why not take a second and subscribe? You should do it. Deadpool Samurai would do it. Number 9, Ultimate Deadpool. If you are more interested in hearing about a version of Deadpool who is completely different from his usual 616 or MCU self, Ultimate Universe Deadpool might be your style. This version of the character first appeared in the Earth 1610 reality, but he actually also went multiversal in his adventures with the rest of the evil Deadpool Corps. While Wade Wilson himself is usually known as being a friend to the mutants, even when they ask him to please not be so friendly with them, this version of the character, known as Wadey Wilson, actually hunts mutants instead. Where Deadpool usually has a darkness within himself that he kinda hides with a sometimes dark sense of humor, this version of Deadpool is more just straight up dark, believing in human rights over mutant rights. Actually, I don't think he even thinks mutants should have rights. He's like, no rights for the mutants. Number 8, Deadman Wade. Deadman Wade kinda reminds me in terms of his look of the DC Comics Deadman, but in terms of what he's like when it comes to his powers and abilities, he is still very much similar to Earth 616's Deadpool. This version of Wade got his powers from Apocalypse. He ended up being a member of Apocalypse's team of Pale Riders, his group of elite assassins. He made his first appearance in the 1995 comic Excalibur in issue number 1. He would end up being killed in his universe when Nightcrawler removed his head from his body and teleported away with it. However, he'd later be resurrected only to be killed again when he ended up joining the evil Deadpool Corps in the Deadpool Kills Deadpool series. Number 7. Venumpool. Oddly enough, when it comes to Venumpool, there has actually been more than one of this alternate Deadpool created. As you may have guessed from the name alone, Venumpool is a combination of Venom and Deadpool. Initially originated as a concept in the What If comic that answered the question, what if Venom possessed Deadpool? Here Venumpool also sported a Jerry curl perm hairstyle for some reason. I guess he thought it looked cool. There's also an even more epic looking version of this character though, who appears in Marvel Contest of Champions, which I highly recommend you look up, although you could probably see him in this video, probably put a picture of him up, but yeah, he looks scary. Number 6. Deadpool 2099. Because after the success of Spider-Man 2099 in the comics, every character was getting their own version. Although it might surprise some Deadpool fans to know that it actually took a bit longer for Deadpool to get his. Making her appearance in 2016, Warda Wilson is the futuristic daughter of Shikla and Deadpool. She's the daughter we never got from that couple since they ended up breaking up and getting divorced. Sad. The original version of Warda appeared in Jerry Dugan's Deadpool run in issue number 6. Here we are introduced to her as Wade's daughter from a version of the 2099 future. She actually hails originally from Earth 16356, which is not the same reality that Miguel O'Hara's Spider-Man 2099 hails from, considered the main 2099 reality of Earth 928. Warda becomes Deadpool in this future despite hating her father, who had already broken things off with her mom before she was even born. Number 5. MCU. It's weird to call Ryan Reynolds' take on the character the Marvel Cinematic Universe version, but truly, he is now officially. Deadpool will be joining the MCU with his next motion picture, and I honestly couldn't be more excited to see what that could mean for the character. I personally am wondering if this is the film that sees the X-Men properly and finally introduced to the cinematic universe now that the Fox merger is complete. I mean, we've been waiting for a long time. Just give us something. I know Wolverine will be there, but I need more. However, at the same time, technically the first MCU mutant may have been Kamala Khan's Ms. Marvel. We'll have to wait and see though, as we hopefully learn more about Kamala and what is going on with her in the Marvels film. But based on what's happening with her in the comics, I'm thinking that's where we're headed. Why do I love MCU Deadpool? Probably because he was the version of the character who got me the most interested in diving deeper into Wade Wilson's tragic and often hilarious adventures in the comics. Seriously, I saw the movies, loved it, and then I was like, I gotta read all these Deadpool comics, and then I did it, and I loved it. It was a good time. You should do it too, if you haven't already. Number 4. Fox Original. Technically, there is another live-action version of Deadpool also running around in the Marvel Universe, played as well by Ryan Reynolds. Or well, used to be running around in the Marvel Universe, not so much anymore. This version of the character, however, was much less comic book accurate, appearing in the Fox X-Men spin-off film X-Men Origins Wolverine, which of course focused solely on Wolverine's origin story. In the film, Ryan Reynolds plays Wade Wilson, an overly talkative and jokey mercenary who later becomes the Merc without a mouth after being experimented on himself by Weapon X and becoming their pawn to be used in a fight against Wolverine. I know way too much about why this was all done and the plans for this version of the character and what was going to happen with it, but let's just keep going. Despite how inaccurate and goofy this version of the character ended up being, he still paved the way for the other, more comic book accurate adaptation that Reynolds would also later portray, also working once again with Fox. Although this time doing the character some very deserved justice, I think, especially after this version exists. In Deadpool 2, Deadpool also gets to travel back in time to clean up this completely weird mistake of an adaptation by killing this version of the character. So, yay! Number 3. Warda Wilson. I know what you're thinking. Didn't we already talk about Warda as Deadpool 2099? Well, that's actually not the only version of Warda, or Warda as Deadpool, in the multiverse, if you can believe it. I actually wonder, where is the alternate version of Warda who just becomes queen of the underworld like her mom? This version of Warda, though, also did not do that. Instead, she once again followed in her father's footsteps in this reality. This version of Warda as Deadpool hails from 2022's Spider-Man 2099 Exodus. This version of the character was created by Steve Orlando and Kim Jacinto. I think this makes sense, considering that when I read Orlando's stuff, it also kind of reminds me of Dugan's writing sometimes, and you know, Dugan is the one that originally gave us Warda, and I say that in a good way too. I like Orlando and I like Dugan, so it's a good thing. The reality this Warda hails from is also sadly not the main 2099 reality of Earth 928, but instead the other alternate reality of the 2099 future, there are so many, known aptly as Earth 2099, which I actually like better for that Earth. I'm just like, yeah, why don't we just call it Earth 2099? It's a lot cleaner in my mind. Number 2. Gwenpool. Technically an alternate of both Gwen Stacy and Deadpool combined. Gwendolyn Pool existed originally in a world where there were no superheroes, or rather, like in our world, where superheroes only exist in stories, comics, cartoons, and films. While never confirmed, her home reality, because of this fact, is actually suspected to be the same one that we exist in now, designated Earth 1218 in the comics. She eventually comes to Earth 616, and because heroes do exist here, she sets out to become one herself. However, due to a mistake on her form when she was getting her suit made, her codename was believed to be Gwenpool, when in reality, Gwenpool, with an E at the end, is really just her actual name. While she looks like Gwen Stacy, she acts more like Deadpool, although I'd argue she is less grating than he is, and has a bit more charm than the original as a Deadpool alternate. I also really love her suit. I gotta do a Gwenpool cosplay at some point. I love Gwenpool, she's so cool. That rhymes, so you know it's true. Number 1. Wolverinepool. We all know that Wolverine and Deadpool don't normally get along, though not for Deadpool's lack of trying, goodness knows. Deadpool is actually kind of fond of Wolverine and seems to genuinely enjoy teaming up with him at times, whereas Wolverine, like most supers out there, often gets easily annoyed if he's forced to work with Wade. Although to be fair to Wade, I mean Wolverine doesn't usually like working with people anyways, he's usually a pretty grumpy Gus. In fact, the last team up that I've seen of Wolverine and Deadpool in the Benjamin Percy run of Wolverine was honestly pretty brutal, with Wolverine doing all sorts of terrible things to Deadpool just because he could. It's so mean. However, Marvel also knows how much we love reading this ridiculous team up, and so what did they do? They made a literal mashup character known as Wolverinepool. Wolverinepool first appeared in the 2007 comic Cable and Deadpool issue number 46. Sadly, his existence was pretty short-lived as he died a few years later. He ended up choosing to join up with the evil Deadpool Corps during Deadpool Kills Deadpool, which ultimately meant he had to lose because he was evil and therefore die. Though I am confident that one day this character will be resurrected. I mean, he's made up of 2 insanely popular characters, so they have to bring him back, right? At some point. Eventually. We just gotta wait. I mean, he did die, I think, in 2013, so we might be waiting for a while, but I think he's coming back. Marvel, if you're watching this, do it for me.
Coming in at number 10 is Ice Master. In the alternate dimension of Earth 13729, an older, really old version of Bobby Drake has gone full Gandalf, sporting tattered robes and a cloak with the whole long gray hair and bushy ice beard. He now goes by Professor Drake, or even the name Ice Master. Ice Master traveled across realities to Earth 616 to warn Iceman about who to trust and about future decisions. He knew he was running out of time, but he got what he needed to be done. He disappeared into thin air pretty soon after the conversation was over, presumably going back to his reality, or maybe the conversation erased his reality entirely in a paradox kind of way. Maybe that's not how it works. Maybe it's Maybelline. We'll never know. Number 9. The movies. Yeah, I'm talking about the X-Men movies with Shawn Ashmore as Bobby Drake. Unlike a lot of other realities, including the main 616 universe, this version of Bobby Drake was not the youngest founding member of the X-Men. Instead, Bobby is introduced as a student at the Xavier School for Gifted Youngsters, and also as the immediate love interest for Rogue, similar to the Ultimate Universe. He even made her an ice crystal shaped like a rose. So cute. He doesn't actually do a whole lot in the first movie though, other than being impersonated by Mystique to get Rogue to leave the school. In the second movie, he is definitely a bit more involved and he reveals his mutation to his parents, but again, he is kinda treated like a kid and a side character, and so is Rogue, and they don't really do much. In the third movie, by the final battle, Bobby is finally standing as an official X-Man. It's here that he comes face to face with his rival slash former best friend, Pyro, and completely overpowers him, headbutting the hotshot after taking on his ice form for the first time in those movies. It only took 3 movies, but he got there. And then, lastly, in Days of Future Past, which opens in a post-apocalyptic 2023, actually, I didn't know that, Bobby is one of the last surviving X-Men and Free Mutants, and he participates in the team's attempt to change the past, defending them alongside the other surviving X-Men. He dies twice in this movie, but thanks to time travel, he's all good, so let's hope we get to see him again, maybe in Deadpool 3. Number 8, King Ice. Yeah, you know we're talking about an amalgam comic yet again. When Doctor Strange Fate, aka a mix of Doctor Strange from Marvel and Dr. Fate from DC, attempted to merge the Prime Marvel universe and the DC universe to reform the amalgam universe, he took both the X-Men and the Justice League of America and slapped them together with some sticky tack, chewing gum, and some duct tape. This created a whole slew of really awesome amalgamated characters, one of which would be King Ice, aka a blending of both Iceman and Aquaman. He and the others were used to confront Access and Doctor Strange, but were pretty much ineffective. Once Doctor Strange fate was defeated and the Amalgam universe restored, the combined people were split. But I still can't help but think this makes a whole lot of sense with Iceman using the moisture around him to fuel his powers, and Aquaman, well, he's Aquaman. Number 7, 1602. In a dystopian and alternate future, the villain Purple Man used his powers to become president and take control of America. Trying to eliminate any opposition, he decided to send Captain America to the Elizabethan times instead of just, I don't know, putting him 6 feet under, I guess. Whatever the silly reason was, this had an unexpected effect. When Cap wound up in the 1600s, it created another divergent timeline, one in which present-day heroes already emerged in the 17th century, the year 1602 to be precise. Mutants in this timeline were referred to as witchbreed, and as such were feared and hunted by the Inquisition. Just as Iceman is a mainline original X-Man, he is also part of this alternate timeline's X-Men team as well. The counterpart of Iceman was called Roberto Trefusis, and despite his young age, he showed a great control over his power. Roberto managed to encase an entire sailing ship in a block of ice and was able to turn rain into an ice storm. Roberto also claimed to have served as cabin boy for the famous Sir Francis Drake, who happened to be his uncle. With the whole Drake last name, that kind of makes sense. Number 6, Age of Apocalypse. In the Age of Apocalypse reality, it was Magneto who originally founded and trained the X-Men, thanks to some tomfoolery by the mutant Legion. Bobby Drake, being among the first mutants Magneto recruited, was pushed by the Master of Magnetism much harder than Xavier would have, making the youngest X-Man drop his joking, kid-like attitude and tap into his full potential. And he really did tap into it. Iceman in this universe was responsible for defeating Eunice, freezing him, then shattering the leader of Apocalypse's Infinites. And he played a big part facing Apocalypse's Horsemen. Later, Iceman revealed himself as Sinister Iceman, and united with Archangel, who had become the new Apocalypse. Bobby was as cold as ice in this universe, and that pun is intended. And he had no qualms about ending lives. As a villain, he began going around taking out X-Force members, like when he shattered Deadpool and was trying to delete Wolverine from life, but his actions were in vain because Warren Worthington, Archangel, regained his real personality. After that, Bobby, alongside Dark Beast and a few others from the Age of Apocalypse reality, traveled to Earth 616, where he specifically hid in Madripoor, enjoying his time away from his chaotic reality and hiding from his universe's Nightcrawler, who had joined up with X-Force and was hunting down the other traitors from his reality. It wasn't too long before Nightcrawler caught up with Bobby, and things got a little heated, shall we say. Number 5, Ultimate Iceman. In the Ultimate Marvel continuity, Bobby Drake is the youngest founding member of the X-Men, like he should be. He ran away from his family at the peak of government-supported Sentinel attacks, trying to save his family from their wrath. Now, Bobby was found by the X-Men on their very first mission, where he ends up being the one to save the day when he freezes a Sentinel, preventing it from falling on and taking out innocent bystanders. Bobby pretty quickly proved himself as a valuable asset, single-handedly taking out the Ultimates once with a gigantic ice wall and stopping an invasion by Colonel Wraith and Weapon X all by himself. He was only able to be stopped by Rogue, who was his on-again, off-again girlfriend and in temporary possession of Marvel Girl's telepathy at the time. Professor X has stated that Bobby is one of the 3 most powerful X-Men, which is pretty accurate in most realities. Number 4, Dark Iceman. Back in 2005, the Scarlet Witch's creation of the House of M enabled the Shadow King of Earth 616 to escape to an alternate reality, Earth 6141. The Shadow King here possessed that version of Professor X and then corrupted his team of original X-Men, creating Shadow X. He maintained constant telepathic contact and control over them and forced them to take the lives of all the heroes of their world. Professor X and Shadow X killed all the other paranormal beings in their native reality before coming to Earth 616 as a result of M-Day. The members of Shadow X, including Iceman, faced off against New Excalibur and were eventually defeated by them. Shadow X was then sent to prison, where they were contacted by members of Black Air, who arranged for their release, and they eventually met with the possible world conqueror Albion to join forces. Eventually, the members of Shadow X were released from their mind control control with the passing of Professor X, and they defected away from Black Air and Albion and teamed up with New Excalibur. One by one, the members of Shadow X were unfortunately taken out by the Shadow Captains until only Bobby remained. With his friends gone, he used his mutant powers to their fullest until he finally had nothing left to give and he passed away in battle. Number 3. Earth X. Like most of the other characters from the Earth X reality, a lot of Iceman's early history mirrors that of his Earth 616 counterpart up until the release of the Terrigen Mists on the world. All of humanity was mutated, and Bobby was among the many heroes trying to help people in a world gripped by chaos and anarchy. And one of the ways that he did this was by teaming up with former X-Men Angel and delivering groceries to those who were not powerful enough to safely leave their homes, which is actually quite sweet when you think about it. At some point in this timeline, Bobby lost the ability to transform back into his human form, as in, he was constantly in his ice form. So, to avoid melting, Iceman was forced to go north, where he, no joke, constructed a winter wonderland at the top of the world where he came to reside alongside the nearby Inuit peoples. Fast forward quite a bit, and Galactus eventually destroys the celestial embryo that is growing in the Earth's core. This alters the planet's mass and pushed the planet out of its regular orbit. As you can imagine, the planet began to suffer catastrophic environmental changes. The temperature in New York dropped to freezing Arctic temperatures, and so Bobby could return to New York and be reunited with Angel. Yay! The two heroes would aid the law in protecting the Human Torch in New York, which would be under constant attack by followers of the Church of Immortus. Eventually, thanks to the Absorbing Man, the Earth returned to normal, and Iceman most likely went back up north, but he did show up for the wedding between Medusa and King Britain, and with his former X-Men, which is kinda nice. Number 2. House of M. In the timeline created by the Scarlet Witch, known as the House of M, Bobby definitely does things quite a bit differently. When his mutant powers first ever manifested, Bobby kept them a secret from everyone but his parents. Turns out that he should have kept it from them too. Bobby's own father turned him over to the authorities when the Human-Mutant War began because he thought he would be safer in custody than hunted as a renegade. I don't know about that one. Bitter over his betrayal, Bobby was more than happy to join up with none other than Apocalypse when the Ancient Mutant freed Bobby during a raid on the Alamo Mutant Camp. After the war ended, with Magneto becoming the new ruler of the globe, the Master of Magnetism gave North Africa to Apocalypse, and Iceman continued to serve his savior loyally as one of his horsemen. We know that the horsemen always get some kind of upgrade to their powers. I'm not sure if I'm wrong about this, but we actually never learn how Iceman's powers were augmented, and that really annoys me. Either way, Iceman helped to secure the human population of the area, forcing them to rebuild Egyptian monuments. Eventually, Iceman was one of the mutants who volunteered to accompany Apocalypse when Magneto authorized the invasion of Wakanda. He distracted Sunfire, Storm, and Namor, freezing the latter two long enough to allow Apocalypse to get past them. But he took a brutal attack from Sunfire, and it's actually pretty unclear whether or not Sunfire completely destroyed him. We know that Iceman has been able to reform himself from being evaporated, so who can really say? Not me. Number 1. Draa, King of Ice. Iceman is an original X-Men, the youngest of them, but he isn't exactly the most popular of them, so unfortunately that means that while he does have lots of alternate selves, they don't always really get a lot of focus, and they're kinda just there in the background. But that doesn't mean they can't still be totally awesome, and that is definitely the case with Draa, King of Ice. In Extreme X-Men from 2012, an X-Men team made up of Dazzler, Emmeline Frost Summers, General James Howlett, Kurt Wagoner, and a floating Charles Xavier head make their way to the alternate Earth 20329. Here, the Earth is ruled by Thor, God of Thunder, alongside and under the direction of 5 other mutant gods: Storm, Skybreaker, and Allmother; Warren, as in Worthington, the Herald; Sawtooth, Sabretooth, Lord of the Wild; Namor, God of the Sea; and finally, Draa, King of Ice. Draa, I'm assuming, is derived from Bobby Drake's last name, and now with such familiar names, you'd assume these gods would be friendly, but it turns out that they are being mind-controlled by their world's Charles Xavier, who is pretending to lead a resistance against them. As for Draa specifically, I believe he has 2 throwaway lines total, and is for the most part just silent and standing in the background looking totally awesome and godlike. And for that, he's making this list.